Thank you very much, Senator Laurel Lizama Singh, Public Relations Officer of the People's National Movement. My parliamentary colleague, Member of Parliament for Port of Spain North St. Anne's West, thank you for hosting us tonight. Minister Stuart Young, Minister of National Security and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. Your Worship the Mayor, thank you very much for coming and joining us here tonight as well. Mayor Alderman Joel Martinez, my cabinet colleague, Member of Parliament for Port of Spain, for Diego Martin Northeast, Minister Colum Imbert, and of course, our new Minister of Education coming out of St. Anne's East, Minister Nian Gadsby-Dolly. And special thanks to those of you in this very large audience here tonight, overflowing audience of 20 people. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to see somebody in front of us as we talk. But the technology allows us to talk to our people all over the country and outside of the country. So thank you very much for paying attention. You see, I've been around so long that I have had experiences where I have spoken to audiences of one. In 1987, I had the opportunity of being on a platform with a certain Patrick Manning. And we went to a meeting in somewhere in Vista Bella there, Smart Gardens, I think it was. And when the time was come for the meeting, there was nobody. Nobody turned up for this meeting. And we having a drink with our friend John Warner, and then Patrick Manning said to me, "Start." I said, "Start how? There's nobody here." He said, "Well, start." And I went to the microphone and I started. And I spoke for 2 hours to nobody in front of me. And when I came back sweating, he said to me, "Very good." I said, "But you wasted my time." He said, "Well, they're home and they'll hear you at home." So we had a big audience. So tonight, 20 people is a big audience because this is 2020 and we are having to comply with the protocols of the Ministry of Health. And I'm happy to see our PNM audience so disciplined being here tonight in Belmont, where our not normal Pigot's Corner meeting is coming to you from St. Francois Girls High School in Belmont. Ladies and gentlemen, children, I have been in the Parliament for quite a while. I've taken part in 34 budget debates, 15 of which from the opposition benches, and the others from the side of government where I functioned as a minister. But this debate that took place, that is going on right now, the debate ended last night, we're into committee stage now. This was, in fact, the worst debate that I have ever had the opportunity to see and to participate in. I was hoping along the way that this debate would have been a stimulus for the people of Trinidad and Tobago to engage their issues in a serious way, because the times are so serious that even people who are normally not paying attention ought to pay attention now, because things are serious. So when the Minister of Finance presents a very serious budget in a very serious time, if it is not engaged in a serious way, you generate the worst possible debate, and that's what happened. This budget required such serious engagement, and the UNC being so incapable of serious engagement that they spent all the time in the budget debate engaging everything else, conducting their internal politics, and never engaged the budget. The one thing they try to tell you is that COVID had nothing to do with the things that we are being called upon to deal with in the budget and out of the budget. The second thing they're telling you, that the country had collapsed before COVID, so therefore COVID played no role in your tribulations now. But of course, you are the same people who went to the polling station and had a choice of choosing a government, and you chose the PNM to continue because you were satisfied with the way the PNM was handling your business. You were satisfied. This budget makes a number of leaps forward. Because there are many things that ought to have been happening in this country that were being postponed. Because either we could have afforded to postpone it, or we could afford it to ignore it. But because of the situation that we are in now, we are forced to pay attention to them. Some people regard that as an opportunity to tell the country, the government putting pressure on you. But let me say something to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Whatever difficulty you are facing now, however difficult your times are now, that difficulty is to give your children and your grandchildren a future. It's not only about you, it's about your children and your grandchildren. And you better understand that. And what the government is doing now is ensuring that they have a future. Because we had a future. Many of us had a good life in this country. The country has been good to many of the adults who are here today. Many of these adults calling for more and more and more from less and less and less, completely forgetting that the role of an adult is to prepare, to protect, and to give your progeny a future. And that is what this PNM government is about. As we put forward our plans and programs, spelled out in numbers by the Minister of Finance, they spent 4 days trying to give you the impression that it's VAPs. And we just throw some numbers up in there and the Prime Minister lie and the Minister of... Let me say something to you. Everything that we have done in this budget is guided by the commitment we made to you the general election a month ago, 2 months ago. They're linked. And that manifesto and that campaign we just ran into is linked to these things. You see this document? Produced by a PNM government. The last one that came out, that was in office last term. Vision 2030. There's no other political party that could present you the document like this. It doesn't exist, because they don't operate so. We had Vision 2020. They throw it away, dump it in the labas, waste all the country time. When we came back into government, we went back to planning an organized future to form a basis for how we go forward in this country. And the Ministry of Planning and Development returned to Vision 2020, updated it, and this document exists, Vision 2030. And we broke up the governance into a number of subsectors, using not just members in the cabinet, but more so people outside of the cabinet with all kinds of expertise to produce analyses of our country's position and to come up with serious responses. I picked a couple here tonight. This one is report of the committee appointed to review and assess wholly owned state enterprises. So when we come to deal with the state enterprises in any way, and you see us or you hear us doing it, it's not VAPs. It was assessed, and out of what we know here, we have an idea of what we can do or ought to do or must do now. That is state enterprises. Just pull this one at random. National Security Council Secretariat Strategic Plan 2017 to 2021. Your PNM government. So when you hear the Minister of National Security talking, or the Prime Minister, or anybody in the cabinet, or the Commissioner of Police, or the head of the SSA, we don't see and hear, we're not operating by VAPs. We have done the work and your country is in good hands. This one, Ministry of National Security Strategic Plan 2018 to 2023. This is not Stuart Young. He happens to be the minister there now. But if tomorrow he is changed from that ministry and another minister comes in, that minister meets this strategic plan for the Ministry of National Security for the period 2018 to 2023. And of course I could add to that, if I was feeling strong tonight, I could have brought a much bigger, thicker one. Because one of the things we did in national security, in this same way of studying the problem and coming up with solutions and recommendations to guide us in decision making, I would have brought here tonight the work of Professor Ramesh Deusaran and a number of very experienced persons in the police and outside of the police service. Because one of the first things we did was to have an appointment made by Professor Ramesh Deusaran to produce that work, which guides us now in going forward. It came to the Parliament for debate. Comprehensive document with recommendations which you may or may not agree with. The opposition took part in the debate, and the only thing they were interested in was rehashing how many murders they had in the country. Speaker after speaker, with the Guardian say and the Express say and the newspaper publish how many murders, how many murders, how many murders. That's all they took part in a document that was really looking at, in an in-depth way, the whole question of policing, its shortcomings and its potential in Trinidad and Tobago. That was their potential. This one, committed to review the levels of health care delivery by the regional health authorities and to rationalize the system of public sector doctors in private practice. This was the Welsh committee. Dr. Winston Welsh chaired this committee and produced this fundamental document for government to be guided by. We brought it to the parliament. Healthcare is so important. And like something told us that it would be even more important. We got this work done. We came to the parliament. Everything we go to the parliament with, they call for committee, 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 committee. This one on healthcare. And then this is only one part. There's another part. It was a two-part document. We put it to committee, Joint Select Committee. That committee never met, could not do an hour's work. You know why? Because the UNC, under Kamala Persad-Bissessar, flatly refused to appoint opposition members to the committee. And a Joint Select Committee has to have government, opposition, and independent. So they sabotaged it simply by not appointing opposition members to the committee. The government appointed its members. The independents were there. But Kamala Persad-Bissessar refused to appoint opposition members, and that gutted, undermined, and killed parliamentary engagement with a document that says, review the levels of healthcare delivery by the regional health authorities. Not yesterday or the day before they were undermining this country. This is a classic example of the UNC undermining the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And those of you in the media, you may want to ask Kamala Persad-Bissessar tomorrow morning, now that she's fighting to stay alive in the UNC, ask her what was the reason for not appointing UNC members to the committee in the parliament, a joint select committee to study the healthcare system. Just ask her. And when you get the answer, publish it. I want to know too. But of course, you know, this one, the roadmap. A roadmap for Trinidad and Tobago post-COVID-19 pandemic. Minister Imbert just mentioned that Ministry of Finance put $500 million. People, you ever see $1 million? You know how much $1 million is? $500 million is not to be sneezed at in Trinidad and Tobago. I saw some spokesperson for the agricultural sector, self-appointed spokesperson, go-to person for the media, saying that that is scraping the bottom of the barrel and that is nothing. $500 million to be spent in a 12-month period? That's, that is approved to be spent in a 12-month period. We had to hit the ground running to be able to spend that money in a 12-month period. But some people figure it's a waste of time. But that came out of this document. Because we woke up on January morning and like the rest of the world were told that there was a pandemic coming our way. Many persons had never heard the word before, but it meant that the whole world is likely to get exposed, get sick, and some will die. Protect yourself. That's what it meant. The government of Trinidad and Tobago in office then struggling with what Minister Imbert just told you there about what was happening in the energy sector, because we live the life we live on energy. Oil price gone down, it takes gas price down with it, it takes the economy down with it, it takes methanol down with it. So our main veins were being emptied because our lifeblood in the international market was going downwards. Not something that we did or didn't do. We are price takers in that matter. And when that was the situation, on that, we got a pandemic to deal with. Immediately we realized that there's going to be a time that we'll be in so much difficulty that we had better prepare how we are going to get out of this situation. So what did the government do? We called together some of the best minds in our citizenry, and thankfully they agreed to come and serve. Not just from the PNM or from the government, but from the country. And in that team, you had former UNC ministers who were invited to participate, and they patriotically agreed to participate. Some of the best minds in the business sector. And we produced this document which guided the Minister of Finance in apportioning, allocating, and rethinking our position in this period where it's not even post-pandemic yet, you know. Pandemic not finished yet. This is during the pandemic. We started by saying, how do we respond now? How do we respond during? And what's going to happen after? That's how your government prepares. So all of these documents, all of them, are the foundation upon which the budget was prepared and presented to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. And you would have thought, just as how the business sector looked at it critically and said, given the circumstances, given the constraints, given our limitations, this is the best that the country could do, and we approve of it. Small business people say the same thing. The Tobago House of Assembly say the same thing. Some chambers of commerce in Trinidad say the same thing. The TTMA look at it and say the same thing. And many of you citizens in your individual capacity, you have said, this is the good thing for us going forward in 2020. The only voice and group of voices that are trying to give you the impression that all fall down are the opponents in the Parliament who refuse to engage the budget. But let me tell you, people, what your engagement with the budget should be going forward. You are not parliamentarians, but what happens in Parliament affects you, and you outside the Parliament have to influence what goes on inside the Parliament. You don't join them in their foolishness. You look at what the Minister of Finance has put forward, because there are a number of issues. Let me just point to 8 of them that should concern you. Forget the opposition. Forget the UNC. They are unpatriotic underminers of Trinidad and Tobago. And all they're about is office and public money. That's all they're about. Revenue Authority. You know what that is? It's an attempt for the country to collect more efficiently the taxes that are due to you, the taxpayer. All of you who are on salaries, which most of you are, you see your salary after your tax come out. And you pay in tax as you earn, and on your pay sheet, the tax comes out. So that's one way of collecting tax. What about those other people in the country who are not on somebody's payroll, but have taxes to pay, but have 1,015 ways to prevent paying that tax? But you carrying what you are liable for, you pay. All we are saying, we need a revenue authority so that what is due, the revenue authority does not make taxes. It doesn't pass law to create new taxes. It simply says, if a tax is to be collected, you have a proper arrangement to collect that tax, and tax evasion will be reduced. Those who are against the revenue authority, a reasonable argument can be made that they are for tax evasion. Tax avoidance is legal. If you know you could do certain things to avoid tax, so you spend money in a certain way, or you don't buy to pay tax on certain things, you are avoiding tax. That is legal. What is not legal is tax evasion, where you are liable to pay a tax, but you evade it by doing things that are illegal. So there's an argument. Who is going to win this argument? Trinidad and Tobago. Those who are for tax evasion, those who are not for sharing the burden as it is shared by the law in the Parliament, because the tax laws take into account what kind of burden will be carried by whom. And this PNM government, we have said before the election that we are going forward with a revenue authority, and we have a mandate to do so, and we are going to do so because it's good for the country. The next one is property tax. We are saying that is a tax that first and foremost, you have to own property to pay the tax. That is being property. Own in a variety of ways, but if you don't have anything, the argument against it is that the poor man, the man on the street who's struggling with nothing, if that is the man you're arguing for, which tax he paying? And there's provision in the law where if you are genuinely in hardship and you have property, that you get relief. So those people, like the UNC spokespersons, especially Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, who are making a career of saying that they will obstruct property tax. Let me tell you the real reason behind this upper class loud voice against property tax. It is because property tax will identify the owners of property in this country, where they are, where they're located, and what they're liable for. Because there are hundreds of thousands of people in Trinidad and Tobago who cannot properly account for where they live and who the land belongs to. And they don't want any property tax. It's not because, as they are arguing, because the tax is onerous. Property tax is not onerous. It's a relatively small charge, but spread across a large number of people. So you can get a good pool of money in that way. It is the commonest tax across the world. And if anybody should know that, it's those people in the UNC. Because they are in the front of the line in America and Canada and elsewhere paying the tax out there where they have the property. They can't go and argue in Miami about property tax. They can't go and argue in Toronto about the property tax. But in Trinidad and Tobago, they're out in front telling you they're going to axe the tax, they're going to prevent the tax, and expect to win the election by that. Tonight, I want to congratulate the people of Trinidad and Tobago who went to the polls and voted for the PNM to collect this tax. As a matter of fact, a particular person in the media had said to me one day, couldn't understand why the PNM was talking about property tax during an election. Because people don't like to hear about tax, and therefore you could lose the election talking about tax. And I said, it is because we want the people to know what our thinking is, what our program will be, and if we get their permission, it will be a mandate to do it after we win the election. If people don't like it and they vote us out of office, then those who are voted into office have a mandate not to do it. We have a mandate to do it, and we will do it. You would have heard the Minister of Finance say that the National Insurance Board is in danger of heading towards bankruptcy because its expenditure profile is much higher than its revenue profile. One way of dealing with that, as was done before some time, more than once I think, is increasing the charge, contribution. That's one way. If the expenditure that people are getting, the payouts and the staff and so on, is more than the revenue, you can deal with that by simply increasing the fortnightly contribution, where everybody is charged across the board. Or you can extend the retirement age to reduce the payout. Some countries have done that. Go look at Barbados, see what they've done. Look elsewhere around the world and see what they've done. The Minister of Finance in a budget mentioned that as something to look at. Not one person in the UNC engaged it as a matter for public discourse in the Parliament. But we will discuss it during this government's term, because we are ensure that the NIB is there to provide the service and the security that it provides now for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The port. The first thing that comes up when you mention the port and fixing it is about loss of jobs. But that is a concern, yes. That is a concern. But there's a bigger concern. The port is an asset that is underperforming. If we have a proper modern port in Port of Spain, it becomes a bigger contribution to our national economy. And try as we might, the best place for the port of Port of Spain is not in the Ministry of Works. We've tried that, and it has failed. We have come to the conclusion that the best thing for the port is to put the port in private hands, where you get the maximum contribution to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago by having an efficient port run by the private sector. We are going to privatize the port of Port of Spain. There's a quarry in Tobago, which used to be run by the THA, public servants running the quarry. And for 15 years, I couldn't get them to agree. That is a bad arrangement. Public servants are not the best people to run the state quarry. But of course, the same story about jobs and about what privatization and sort of thing. But we're going to have to, THA was told and they agreed they went halfway. I said, put the quarry in a board, appoint a board, not the Ministry of Works or what it is. Appoint a board and put the board to run the quarry. They did that. And today that quarry, for the first time, is exporting material to Trinidad. If you go down to the highway and the creek, the armor rock that's taking place there protecting the road from the sea came from Tobago, the quarry in Tobago, the government quarry in Tobago, being run by our borders against the public service. Crushed rock is now coming from Tobago by barge to Trinidad, instead of coming from St. Lucia or from Nova Scotia. Are we saving foreign exchange? So people, because something is being done or was being done in a particular way, it does not mean that is the only way or that is the best way to do it. Change brings success. There's no success without change. And where there's conflict, we will resolve those conflicts, but we need the change because more so we need the success. So those who are telling you leave it just so, in this budget debate with all these fundamental changes being suggested, opposition members get up and beating the same old story. I was right there when Kamala Persad-Bissessar came into the parliament late as usual to spend 5 minutes. And David Lee told her that the government has announced that they're closing down the refinery. And this was her reaction. They're closing the refinery? And he said, yes. Well, they lost the election. They lost the election. And she smilingly sat in her seat. And I watched that woman, so I said, it's all about the election, not about the bad system that is threatening to wreck the entire country's finance, about the $850 million that was owed August coming, that we had to pay and we couldn't pay, not about restructuring the company to move from losing $2 billion to putting it in a different situation, creating a new company called Heritage and one called Paria, where last fiscal year, Heritage made over $1 billion in profit, paying $700 million in taxes, and Paria, who this morning I'm told made $160 million in profit. That wasn't the point for her, you know. It was all about the election. So even though the facts are in front of you now that the restructuring has worked, remember Caroline C. Persad-Bechan? Her contribution to the restructuring of Petrotrin and the creation of Heritage was that we will not be able to sell the oil that we're going to produce at Heritage because it can only be refined in our refinery. So since we closed the refinery, nobody will buy that heavy crude. I can tell you, Miss Caroline, this morning at Cabinet, where we get a report every month, this morning, the Molo crude at Petrotrin, at Heritage, was earning $1 more than West Texas International. $1 more than the posted price of West Texas. So if we had listened to Kamala Persad-Bissessar, we would never have created Heritage. And if we had listened to Caroline C. Persad-Bechan, we never would have created Heritage because they are the experts. They know that nobody will buy the crude. But people, the market is good for our crude. So all we have to do is try and produce more. That's the assignment, produce more, because the market is good for it. And you know, you ask any of them if they read any of these documents, if they read any of these documents, one page or even the cover, and the answer is no. And then you ask yourself, then what is the basis of your position? What is the basis of your information? What is the basis of your education? This opinion you have expressing left, right, and center, what is it based on? And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, That applies to the university too, eh? People in the University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago will not read these documents, will not educate themselves, but with the label of UWI on the television all the time, jumping out talking one set of damn stupidness, right? You, the people who will rely on them and rely on us to guide you, because you have put people and you invested in us, you invested in them to guide you. They start off by saying, I don't know, but, and as you hear that, it's rubbish down the line, down the line. All of them preface it with, I don't know, but. And your children's future, your grandchildren's future at stake. So they come to the parliament. They ain't no money for local government. They want more money for local government. And of course, they go to their own string band story. Racial discrimination against their local government bodies. People, the money that we aim to collect from property tax, we have said, and it will be, for local government. So Diego Martin property owners, you pay your tax in Diego Martin and it goes to the Diego Martin Corporation. You pay your tax in Penal Debe, it goes to the corporation in Penal Debe. You pay it in Mayaro or Sandy Grande, the same way that is happening in Tobago, where the THA is collecting government revenues and spending it on the people of Tobago. That is what we are saying will happen in Trinidad through local government reform. So in one side of the mouth, they want more money for local government, money that isn't available in the Ministry of Finance for increases to local government, but they don't want any property tax. But what they're really against, the same way they undermine the Joint Select Committee on Health in the Parliament, they are undermining local government reform because they know if they block the property tax, the reform in local government will not come. And the same reason we can't understand what reason they could have had to want to undermine the health examination. Why would they want to undermine money coming to local government from a system of taxation that is reasonable and fair? It is because they are unpatriotic underminers. That's what it is. And they're all concerned about office, and they believe that if local government reform takes place, it will be difficult for them to win something, I don't know. They're not winning nothing. They are born losers. 11 times she lose, and the next time she will lose again, it will be 12 and 13. We enjoy the life we live at this time, largely because we were able, at a time earlier, we made a decision not to flare gas in this country. I don't know how many of you would know, the gas that we live on now, there was a time in our industry when we were mainly involved in oil, that the gas was just burnt. We used to stay in Tobago and see the flares, as we still do now. Stay in Tobago and see the flares offshore where the gas was being burnt. Then that was low pressure gas that was associated with oil production, with a lot of gas. This PNM, this party, PNM government decided to get engaged in compressing that low pressure gas and bringing it onshore and creating an industry with it. That's how we got into gas. And because we got into gas successfully, we started now looking for gas, and now we drill and find high pressure gas, not associated with oil, but gas for gas, and come, and that's what Point Lisa lives off. That's what pay your bill, pay your hospital bill, pay your doctors, your nurses, and your children's school fees. That's what happened. But over the years, after 20-odd years of doing that, we have been draining down the gas that we have been using. It's a wasting resource. It's not like grass. When you cut grass, grass grow back. But when you use gas, it's gone. You have to find new gas. Every year we use 1.5 trillion cubic feet of gas. 1.5 trillion cubic feet of gas every year, approximately, we use that. It means that if we're going to stay in the same place, having gas to continue the business, because we used up 1.5 last year, if we don't want the amount available to go down, we have to find another 1.5 to put it in the bank. That's what we have to do. We got to the point now where we have gas only for about 10 or 11 years. Ask yourself where you were 10 years ago. And if you do that, come forward from there and say that today was when we had no gas in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's when all fall down. So, a PNM government, same political party that started the gas business that gave you this life. We didn't do what they did. They left office in 2015. Gas contracts not attended to. Pointless companies on month to month. We decided that because of where we located, because of who we are, Trinidad and Tobago's long-term future and even medium-term future in the gas business is to be able to access gas from across the border. Venezuela has endless gas. Our gas, we only have gas for about 11 years or thereabouts. You will wait until year 11 to start to look for gas for Trinidad and Tobago. So, you elected a PNM government. One of the first things I did was to engage the government of Venezuela. We don't vote in Venezuela. We don't choose Venezuela government for Venezuela. If you know the history of Venezuela, it's turmoil all the time over the centuries, all the year long. But we have our closest neighbors, Venezuela. And on this issue of the future of Trinidad and Tobago, I engaged the Venezuelan government on this matter of Trinidad and Tobago accessing Venezuelan gas, because we have the machinery in Trinidad that could handle Venezuelan gas. The Venezuelans will get the money from selling the gas to us, and we will get the benefit of processing the gas and selling it to the world. The nearest Venezuelan gas field to us in the north is called the Dragon Field. There are 3 big fields of gas out there. The smallest one is nearest to us, the Dragon Field. And as fate would have it, we have a platform about 17 kilometers from the Dragon Field owned by the government and Shell. And we have pipeline coming from the North Coast fields going down to Point Lisas. So the structure is good, the infrastructure is there. We went to Venezuela and said, listen, let us come together in a memorandum of understanding that we'll work out an arrangement where Trinidad and Tobago will access your Dragon Field gas, which is not going to be accessed for God knows how long, because Venezuela has so much gas that we don't know which year they will ever get to using those gas near to us here. And because of the nature of our approach, a serious government approaching a neighboring government, we got agreement from Venezuela. And we got a deal with Venezuela to access through Shell the Dragon gas. Well, that was like a red flag to a bull to the UNC. You would think that they would have been happy that for the first time, Venezuela agreed to export its gas to a neighboring country. The Dragon deal, the Dragon deal, the Dragon deal. If you came from Mars and you hear them talking about the Dragon deal, you will think it's something bad the government do, something terrible. Ladies and gentlemen, it was the best thing to have happened to Trinidad and Tobago. We agreed on a gas price. Shell has a term sheet. Venezuela agreed for Shell to get involved as a partner with the government of Trinidad and Tobago to get it done. It's all there to be done. And it would have been done if the United States had not intervened through their own arrangements and put sanctions against Venezuela worldwide. That put a halt to that. And of course, there were people here in Trinidad and Tobago gleefully announcing the Dragon deal dead, the Dragon deal dead, as if that is a good thing for Trinidad and Tobago. But they figure once it's something to hurt the PNM, it's good for them. They are unpatriotic underminers of our existence. Okay, so the US sanction has prevented the Dragon deal from going forward. In the meantime, the other 2 fields, Melones and Patao, gone to China and Russia. Understand? And of course, there's a field in the south called Loran Manatee. You would have heard it in the budget debate raised by the UNC. The same way they attacked us for restructuring Petrotrin and telling us that the Trinidad crude could not be sold, now that we've come out and announced that we've got an agreement with Venezuela for Trinidad to go ahead and extract its own manatee gas. First time, maybe anywhere in the world, where there's a cross-border gas field and one country has allowed the other country to go ahead and take your portion and go. That Loran manatee field has 10 trillion cubic feet of gas. It's about the same amount of gas as we have in our national reserve. But all of it does not belong to Trinidad and Tobago because it's on the border, and 27% is in Trinidad and Tobago's territory, and the rest is in Venezuela. For 17 years, governments have been trying to extract that gas through what is called a unitization, which means both of us will do it together. And there's no together because there's so much carrying on in Venezuela and so much incompetence in Trinidad and Tobago in that matter. After 17 years, they've made no progress other than to have signed a unitization agreement. Your government went to the Venezuelans now and said, listen, we are needing gas and we need the gas from that field and we have 27% in that field. We need an agreement from you to allow us to extract our 27%. And Venezuela agreed. So right now, Shell is spending $500 million US to operationalize it so that Trinidad and Tobago could get our 27% of that field. You know, the UNC comes to the parliament in this budget debate and attack that and make that a negative issue to attack the government on. Whose interests are they serving? One of them even used the word dangerous. It is dangerous for us to go and extract our gas, our portion from the Loran manatee field. Well, I will tell you, it's far from being dangerous. When we extract our 27%, and there's infrastructure there, and there's pipeline there, I will be very surprised if the Venezuelans don't want to sell the rest of the gas to us to come to Trinidad and Tobago. So all of it might end up in Trinidad and Tobago. And if that happens, we would have had access to 10 trillion cubic feet of gas to add to the 10 trillion we have in Trinidad and Tobago. We would have increased our reserves by 100%. And the UNC had a problem with that. And the reason why they have a problem with that is because they are unpatriotic underminers. All they're concerned about is elections and winning office to thief money. And you think it stopped there? You think it stopped there? While we were quite properly under the United Nations, refusing to join foreign nations with powerful armies and navies to attack Venezuela and to create mayhem for us here in Trinidad and Tobago, because we know all along, if you want to see Venezuelans awash in Trinidad, let there be military action in Venezuela and the United States invade Venezuela, then you will know a barley grow in Trinidad and Tobago. We discourage the United States and Canada and Britain and Belgium and Holland from doing that. Norway stood with us. Uruguay stood with us. The CARICOM position was led by your Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister of Barbados went to the United Nations and said, we do not agree. Canada's position was time for talk done. We are supporting President Guaido. Europe gave Venezuela 8 days for Maduro to leave office. And the US was publishing how many troops to go to Venezuela. Venezuelan gold was seized by the British government. You know, last week, the Venezuelan government took the British government to court in Britain, to the appeal court. And you know what the ruling was? The ruling was in England, done by the British court in England, that there is no President Guaido, and that the legal president of Venezuela is Maduro. Have you heard anything from the UNC since? The people who were undermining our foreign policy, undermining our future by telling us that we must declare support for President Guaido. But of course, if Kamala Persad-Bissessar was Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, that is what they would have done. But we didn't need a British court to tell us who the president of Venezuela was. All we had to do was to stand on our principle of non-interference and non-intervention and under the United Nations Charter. That's all we had to do. Talking more undermining, the US put sanctions on Venezuela. The UNC went all over the world and come back here, trying to encourage the United States to put sanctions on Trinidad and Tobago. They create all kind of lie and put it on Facebook, how we are allowing Iranian vessels to come to Trinidad and Tobago port to carry fuel, and we're breaking sanctions. Their own company, Paria, they spent days and weeks and months in the parliament lying to the world that Paria was providing fuel to Venezuela in breach of US sanction and telling the United States to sanction us. Munilal wrote to the American ambassador here a long letter making a case for sanction against Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, doesn't end there. During this COVID period, we have a policy of closing our border to protect lives in Trinidad and Tobago. And we know that that has caused some considerable hardship for those of our citizens who are outside. We went as far as to send cash to our embassies and missions abroad. Not a lot, but if there are people who are really destitute, they could have gone to the embassy and got a few $1,000s to keep body and soul together. We've done that. And we started slowly and accelerated our position, and we are now going further and faster, bringing our people home from the United States, from Canada, from the UK, from Barbados, and things are getting better. You know what the UNC did? The UNC once again, undermining Trinidad and Tobago's position. The UNC, through Munila and Kamla Prasad Bissessa, find some itinerant British MP, some fella called Steve Baker. He ignored what we have done and what we are doing for our people. He gone inside the British Parliament to go and raise issue about humanitarian conditions for Trinidad and Tobago citizens on behalf of the UNC in England in the Parliament. So once again, the UNC is prepared to nasty up Trinidad and Tobago's name and taking credit for it. Tuesday morning, I met with the British High Commissioner. There's a brand new British High Commissioner who took up office here a few days ago. As fate would have it, she and I met on Tuesday morning at Whitehall. By Wednesday in the Parliament, I'm discovering that the UNC is in the British Parliament at the back bench, lying on Trinidad and Tobago and getting some person to portray our country in the worst possible light. All I will say to Mr. Baker, if you are interested in Trinidad and Tobago, and if you are interested in the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and if you have nothing to do in Wickham, and you want to help us, we're trying to get back a set of money that the thief from Trinidad that is in England, try and get the British to help us get back the money that the thief from Trinidad. We have already got a senior counsel from Britain pleading guilty in a Port of Spain court for thieving public money with the assistance of UNC officials. There's much more to that. So, Mr. Baker, you will be receiving a correspondence from me personally asking you to help us bring back those who have stolen our money and have it in Britain, and I in Britain, bring it back to justice in Trinidad and Tobago. And the same Munlal who is doing that has a habit of coming inside the Parliament and trying to distract and prevent the government from going where the government's supposed to go to get the help that we're supposed to help to go after white-collar crime. You should have heard Munlal in the Parliament pleading his defense because he doesn't want the government to spend money on British SRPs who pursuing white-collar criminal conduct in Trinidad and Tobago. But let me tell Mr. Munlal something tonight. Those SRPs that you're talking about, the SRP you're talking about, is a British Queen's Council. But when they come to work with the police in Trinidad and Tobago, They have to be inducted into the police and made an SRP. You know why? The last time we tried to fix corruption in the police service, and when Scotland Yard came here, because they were not made police officers in the Trinidad and Tobago police service, that Scotland Yard effort was undermined because local police refused to cooperate and surrender themselves to Scotland Yard because Scotland Yard was not Trinidad and Tobago police. So we learned from that. All the British police and lawyers who come in to help us on fighting white-collar crime that this government is fighting, when they get to the police service, the Commissioner of Police, not the Prime Minister, the Commissioner of Police induct them into the police service so they could follow criminal conduct in Trinidad and Tobago. And whether Munla like it or not, it will happen, and it is happening. It is happening. There are contractors who have made claims and are making and pursuing claims against the government for hundreds of millions of dollars with the assistance of the UNC. Most of those claims are certified corruptly. Hundreds of millions of dollars. If we don't fight it, we have to pay it. We fought one a couple of years ago. It came to a head last week. Contractor claimed $125 million. We fought it. The state entity fought it. The claim was settled last week for $1.5 million. Have you understood what I just told you? If we didn't fight it, we would have had to pay $125 million. But by fighting it successfully, we now have to pay only $1.5 million. And Munla have a problem with the lawyer fee or the effort by the government in fighting that. There's one contractor who sued a state entity for $1.4 billion. And the UNC would have paid that money if they had won the election. Those matters are in the court. And while I'm on this subject, all of us know our local police told us recently, and we've seen a lot of it in the media and elsewhere, where on the streets in Trinidad and Tobago in La Joqueta, $22 million in the hands of people engaged in conduct which are in fact matters of national security. The role of the police in that matter, the role of the defense force in that matter, the role of criminal gangs in that matter, completely unknown to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I can tell you, as head of the National Security Council, I have not had the simplest of answers in that matter. All I can say to you, that as head of the National Security Council, I am disturbed. I am disturbed. And because I was disturbed, and I am disturbed, and because of what it means, pointing to and fingering unacceptable levels of corruption in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, immediately I approached the British government, with whom we have a memorandum of understanding dated 2018 to cooperate on matters of national security. I approached the British government for help. And we are awaiting British police officers in the Trinidad and Tobago on that matter of the drug susu. On the same matter, I approached the Prime Minister of Barbados. As I speak to you now, 2 senior Barbados police investigating officers are on the way to Trinidad and Tobago, and they will form part of a team that will comprehensively examine this matter to find out where, how, whom, and why $22 million could have been found by the police, enter a police station, disappear after, and nobody could tell the country what happened there. And members of the defense force to stand up on the front page of the newspaper and telling the country, I am the one organizing that. Let me tell you all something. That is not a susu. That is a threat to the national security of Trinidad and Tobago. And if we don't investigate it properly, it will be a cancer that will eat the soul of this nation. There are many corporate bodies in Trinidad and Tobago with hundreds of workers producing that never see $22 million. There are big multinational agencies in this country that can't show you a profit of $22 million, if that is the figure. But $22 million in the hands of people in that way, with allegations that the police has done this, and the police has done that, and the defense force has done that. This is a matter which threatens to undermine the very security of the state of Trinidad and Tobago. And it is not to be left to drift. So very soon, there will be a team of experienced police officers examining the Trinidad and Tobago police officers in that matter. We await the outcome. We await the outcome. And we're taking no advice from the UNC on this matter. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you about undermining. Last year, September, I think it was, sometime last year, I led a delegation to Washington as part of the CARICOM approach to the Americans to try and get them to stop their banks from mistreating us here in the Caribbean. The other Prime Minister who had led another delegation is the Prime Minister of Antigua. He went ahead of me and I went later on. And I met with a number of leaders in the United States Parliament there, in the Congress and Senate, to make our case to them that we need to be treated better. And one of the things that was happening is that the Caribbean Basin Initiative, which allows us access to the US market, was coming to an end. And we could not take the chance of that coming to an end and not being replaced by something of equivalent nature. So we had to lobby up front. Trinidad and Tobago has a hired lobbyist in Washington to open the doors for us up there, doors that otherwise would not be open to us. And I was able to meet all these people. And our ambassador in Washington is doing a very good job, and I congratulate him, Ambassador Spencer, Phil Spencer, and our team in Washington. As a result of that meeting, there was a delegation of the United States leaders, chairmen of congressional bodies, units, were due in Trinidad a few days after the lockdown. They were due here on the 17th of March, and I think we locked down the country on the 12th of March. Had the lockdown not taken place, and could we have had transportation with the United States? A bipartisan delegation was due in Trinidad and Tobago to spend 3 days. That had to be cancelled. But we kept lobbying, and in the end, CARICOM was very successful. The United States House has agreed to replace the equivalent of the Caribbean Basin Initiative, much to our satisfaction. And of course, it went to the Senate, and we all held our breath. It was passed in the Senate, and we kept holding our breath, and the President has signed off on it. You know what the UNC position was on that? Go to the Parliament in the budget debate, and you'll find a fellow called Rushton Parry blowing dog whistles to the Americans to not agree to that and to punish those countries that didn't agree with American foreign policy in Venezuela. I want to repeat that. A UNC MP is in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago telling the Americans that he here that they will not be allowing countries that are out of step with American foreign policy from benefiting from this new initiative of access to American market. What the Dumbo did not know is that it had already been done a few days before. And I looked on in amazement and in wonder and asked myself, who does the UNC represent in Trinidad and Tobago? Who? There has never been a more unpatriotic bunch of people in a Commonwealth country. But sabotage is their style. When all else fails, sabotage the success that we have made. The Brian Lara Stadium was down there for 5 years. They left it unattended. They thief out everything that was there that wasn't nailed down and wasn't concrete. And when we demanded that they finish it, they said, no, it's going to cost $280 million. Well, Udicott completed it for $89 million. And today the Brian Lara Stadium is one of the most popular cricket venues in the world for T20 cricket. And we were able to host an entire tournament with the whole world watching in Trinidad and Tobago at the Brian Lara Academy. But the night when we opened that place, the UNC again came out on the highway and they blocked the highway to prevent people from going from north down to the Brian Lara Stadium. They wanted the event to fail. And some of them got inside, and instead of watching the cricket, they went, took off their clothes and stuffed it down in the sewer. So the sewers could have been choked to flood the boxes in the Brian Lara Stadium. You all remember that? We had a problem with the ferry to Tobago. We couldn't find a boat for a little while, and they were playing mass with that. When we eventually found a boat and there was a boat going to Tobago, all of a sudden in Trinidad and Tobago, a boat going to Tobago, they were flushing orange and grapefruit and jerseys down in the toilet on the boat to be able to say that the boat ain't good. Remember that? They haven't stopped, you know. Whoever it is, they haven't stopped. Try and figure out who and why would anybody want to go and light 4 fires down in Bamboo number 1 to burn out the pumps that extract water from Bamboo number 1? Pumps that are meant to prevent the area from flooding. If you know Bamboo number 1, it's a bowl-shaped area. The river is on one side, there's a bank there and so on. So whenever it rains and there's a lot of water from heavy rain, it naturally settles inside of Bamboo number 1. And that water will rise and rise in the houses because it cannot get out. So because the houses are lower than the bank of the river and so on, we have 2 big pumps, 2 or how many? Big pumps that pump the water out over the bank into the river across the way, so there's no flooding. Somebody went there the other night and burned out the pumps, burned out the electrical panels. And all you have to ask yourself, who stands to benefit if Bamboo number 1 is flooded? It has to be the people who make a speciality of flood politics. The forecast was that there was going to be heavy rain here a couple of days ago. And it just so happens that with that forecast, go in there, burn out the pumps. Let me tell you all something that you all may not know, because we kept it from you for quite a while. Somebody went in the repair shop at Piarco Airport, opened a panel on a plane, and cut the wires and closed back the panel. Had that aircraft gone up in the air, you know what would have been the consequences? Because there are people in this country who find that the normal dose of bad news is not enough. And when it's not enough, they'll create something for you. Not happy when there's some good news. There's no country where all the news is good news. There are days when there are bad news, because life is not a bed of roses every day. Some of us grew up going to school barefoot. Some of us grew up drinking hot water, bush tea. Some of us didn't know where the next dollar was going to come from. Some of us had debt that we couldn't bury, but it wasn't always so every day for all of us. But there are people in this country whose only conversation is about how bad it could be. That fellow called Gopi Singh, Dr. Gopi Singh. He been a career battery, state of emergency. That's what he did. And lo and behold, unfortunately, he became a patient of COVID. He ended up in the hospital. We all prayed for him. He came out successfully, and he spoke very glowingly about the treatment and care he got at the hospital. The same hospital that he was bad-mouthing. Came out and spoke glowingly about the treatment and care provided to him by the health caregivers in the hospital. 2 weeks later, back on track again. bad-mouthing the health system in the worst possible way. You know why? Because he's a UNC spokesperson. And he's performing for an audience of one. Because they hope that when they get into government, they will be called to the table to share in the largesse. How then can we rely on people like that to speak for us and to guide us? I travel abroad, you would have heard tonight, to speak to people who have in their boardrooms the future of Trinidad and Tobago's business and the quality of your life. When I go to speak to them, I don't want to speak for myself. I keep telling you I'm the country's #1 salesman. And when I go there, I go with the authority. I respect all I'm doing in a situation where 2 men could rob you in Parliament in Paris. True story, you know. True story. And I take pride when I go to an office abroad to speak for Trinidad and Tobago. I make sure I'm properly dressed and I conduct myself in the best possible way. The only prime minister who ever met an oil company executive in an executive suite, in a hotel, purporting to do our business in a nightie, is a UNC leader. And coming and telling me that we must get together to talk. Imagine a budget with all of these important issues. You open the budget debate by telling me, let's come and talk to decide what we will do about tax exemption perks for ministers. And I knew right then and there that the budget response from the UNC would have been absolute hogwash. As a matter of fact, I'm glad she raised it, because we now have to do something about that, because UNC people have been using the tax exemption to buy $1 million cars for other people. I never did know that until Kamala raised that this week. Understood? So people of Trinidad and Tobago, you have done the right thing on August 10th. You have elected the PNM to continue to serve you responsibly and with vision and with competence. You've done that. So the election is over. We got 5 years now to deal with the issues that we have to deal with. Issues like WASA, issues like the port, issues like NIB, issues like the Tobago issue of internal self-government for Tobago. And those are the issues that will attract the attention of this government in this period. Issues like ensuring that there is a gaming commission in Trinidad and Tobago so that gambling cannot go on unregulated in this country. You know, the only person who ever came and faced the law on gambling in Trinidad and Tobago is a person in America. The American authorities jailed a casino owner for money earned in Trinidad and Tobago, which was not declared in America, $15 million worth of it. And while that's going on, we are here saying that casinos are washed in the country and they must remain unregulated. You have to ask yourself, what is the UNC's motive? The only thing, if I may quote an American president, being called upon to declare war, where lives would be lost and blood will flow, he said the only thing to fear is fear itself. The only thing to fear in Trinidad and Tobago is if you end up with a government who says to you that what exists now, what is going on now, must be left unattended. That's what you have to be afraid of. Thankfully, you don't have such a government. You have a government that cares. It's because we care. Why, one of the first things we did, meeting a significantly depleted treasury, one of the first things we did was to give further relief to those who are least able to help themselves. We did that long before COVID. And one of the things we did during this COVID management is to put additional monies in the hands of people. You're earning up to $72,000 a year now. It is tax-free because we know that there are additional burdens, $84,000. You're earning $84,000 or less, you pay no tax. Where taxes exist, you have some control over what you do. If the tech rates go up, go and check your house. Every room has a light with a switch. The reason why there's a switch on that light is that you are in control. You can turn it off. You know why my marriage lasts so long? It's because I tell my wife, you pay the light bill. Otherwise, this marriage wouldn't last. Because my wife and children, they can only bring down with the switch. They can't carry it back up. Serious story. Up to this day, my wife pays the light bill in our house. And that's one of the contributions of our long marriage. The price of gasoline may go up in the future when the price of oil goes up. But we are part of an international market. Right now the price is down and it may go lower sometimes. They are predicting lower prices in some quarters and higher prices somewhere down the road. It's an international product that is internationally priced. There was a time when we didn't always have subsidy on gasoline. This thing about you have to have subsidy on gasoline. But if we do have it with an increased price, or even at the current price, you have a responsibility to control how much fuel you burn. How often do you drive your car? How far do you go? What time of day you travel? Who you carry with you? These are things that you have control over. What kind of car you buy? You buy a gas guzzler, then you pay for it out of your pocket. You buy one that sits gas, then you're smiling. You go into town, you and your daughter, you go together, you save a trip. She goes with one car, you go with the other car, you burn 2 sets of fuel. These are things that you have control over. And they're not free. That is a word that should leave this nation. There's nothing that is free. Somebody else is paying for it. And in fact, you yourself paying for it. They might be wasting the expense, but it is not free. When you use the word free, it means the state is paying for it for you. It has become an entitlement in many cases. And we have come to the point in our existence, we had a number of years where the state could have afforded to do certain things. But now, because of changed circumstances, whatever the reason, you cannot do it the same way for one simple reason. The money is not there to do it the way it was being done. So we got to do more with less. And that is why yesterday I could have told the Parliament that the last Prime Minister spent $69 million or how much on entertainment and conference and functions. We spent $8 million. So even if we wanted to spend $60 million, it wasn't available. But we didn't want to. But what we were able to do is to make $8 million do the things that we thought had to be done. Prioritize, exercise, and be responsible. I want to thank the people of Trinidad and Tobago for being so perceptive, for being so patient, for being so resilient, for being so responsible, that you saw through all the exhortations, all the nastiness, all the lies, all the bad mouthing, all the oh we got dead, and you went to the polls and you voted solidly for the People's National Movement. Because you know that what you have in government now is a cabinet of experience and youth with responsibility, honest and caring, and that is the best prescription in this time and every time. You can count on us because we are counting on you. We counted on you on August 10th and you came through. And I maintain that the vast majority of people in Trinidad and Tobago are decent, right-thinking, sensible people. And you're called upon to demonstrate that now, COVID or no COVID. It's a difficult period for us, but it's not hopeless. We can get over this. Tough times don't last forever. Tough people do. And you are a tough and proud people. I love you. I'm proud of you. Thank you very much.